Hi, welcome. We'll get started here right at 7, so we've got a couple of minutes before we begin, but thank you for being here. If you have questions or if you have comments or anything that you'd like to make note of, you can throw that in the chat. The webinar chat should be available to you all. And then as I will introduce later on too, the Q&A feature will be how we take questions for the question and answer session at the end. So you can feel free to use that at your leisure as we get into the readings here. Give it a couple more minutes for people to jump in and we'll get started. All right. Welcome, folks. Um, as people are trickling in, I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. Welcome to Readings from the Room. My name is Spencer Story Johnson. This is my second time hosting one of these. It's been a joy so far, and I'm excited to share two amazing writers with you tonight. This reading series launched in 2021 as a way to connect writers during the pandemic and has sort of become a foundational part of a foundational event of the Writers' Room. The Writers' Room is, for anyone new to it, is a co-working space in downtown Boston for any and all writers, established and emerging, who want a quiet place to work, to just have their own space outside of their homes to do some of the vital work that we do as writers. The room is open 24 hours a day and provides desks and science and the quiet companionship of other writers. They've been serving the greater Boston area since 1993, which is really fantastic as well. And the virtual events that started with the pandemic helped foster that sort of writing community in Boston in that challenging time that we all went through. The website writersroomofboston.org is a great place to check out information about the Writers' Room if you're interested in applying or being a part of things. And it's also a great place to find information about upcoming events. There are a couple of events upcoming that I would like to let you know about. First of all, if you are in the Boston area, Boston Book Festival is this weekend, October 26th. And the Writers' Room will have a table there. There will be people at that table all afternoon. If you'd like to stop and chat with anybody, we'd love to see you there. And then Tuesday, October 29th, at 7:30 is the Writers' Room After Hours interview, which is hosted by Marjorie Gans. She will be interviewing a writer online for audiences. The writer is Jennifer Lang. She is a transplant from San Francisco who now lives in Tel Aviv, and she'll be talking about her writing process as well as some of her recent work. And then the next reading from the room, the next part of this series, is on Tuesday, November 19th. We'll have two more established and emerging wonderful writers for you all. And I think that covers all of my announcements. With that, I am very excited to introduce our first reader for tonight, Lesley Wheeler. Lesley Wheeler is the poetry editor of Shenandoah and is the author of the forthcoming Microcosmic, runner-up for the Dorset Prize and her 6th collection of poetry. Her other works include the hybrid memoir, Poetry's Possible Worlds, and the novel Unbecoming. Wheeler's work has received support from the Fulbright Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Breadloaf Environmental Writers Workshop, and the Sewanee Writers Workshop. Her poems and essays have appeared in Poetry, Poets and Writers, Kenyon Review Online, Ecotone, Guernica, Massachusetts Review, and elsewhere. Lesley, thank you so much for joining us. Please take it away.
Thank you so much for having us, Spencer. I'm really excited to be here. I'm trusting that the volume's good, and you'll let me know if it's not. My The room that I am coming to you through the Writers' Room of Boston from, I'm in Lexington, Virginia, which is the town where I live. In my home office, which is not, in fact, the interior of a pumpkin shell, although it is very orange. So I'm going to read from the book that Spencer just mentioned. This is, in fact, the very first reading focusing on my forthcoming poetry collection, Mycocosmic, which just became available for pre-order from Tupelo Press. And that's Myco, M-Y-C-O, as in mushrooms and fungus. Basically, over the past several years, as I've been working through some difficult stuff, I was reading about mycelium, the underground fungal system that eats death, lets the trees talk to each other, and enables all kinds of connections. It's really beautiful to me, this idea that we're all connected, that it's not just a metaphor, that it's a literal reality. And I find that really exciting, and realizing how much of that reading was starting to percolate through the book was what helped it all come together. Um, so I'm going to read you several poems from this and then one from my last book to close with. I'm going to start with a toughest one. One of the situations I've been dealing with over the past several years is the recurrence of my mother's lymphoma and her death in 2021, just as the vaccines were starting to become available. This one is called Extended Release. The oxy hardly works at all. The refrigerator rings like a telephone. I hold her hand as another non-healer unwraps and anoints her flaming sores. Sores isn't right. They're craters, or portals she keeps slipping through. Hospital, rehab, hospital, home. The visiting nurse, with whom I've fallen in love, whispers to my mother, "You're so strong." She's too tired to laugh. And to me, "You're doing a good job." I could weep, but I don't. My mother keeps yelling into the landline, "Somebody's at the door." I trash sour milk and a rotting pepper from the bottom drawer. She points at the ceiling whirlpools and asks, "What do you think I'll wear up there?" I dress her in a clean fleece nightgown. She feels so cold. Soon she can't lift her bruised hands. I call 911. When she opens her eyes to the EMT, she cries, "Oh, Les, what have you done?" Each new doctor halts the prayer of oxycodone. I should have brought pills, but I won't know how to daughter until it's done. I swear that refrigerator's haunted. I'm writing this poem I'll never be able to read aloud after another transfer. "Can I have a bed?" she says, while lying. She's in quarantine, but I hear she's refusing Ensure and those tiny cubed peaches, tender as blisters. She always thought people had a right to end their suffering. She never believed in heaven. "But I'm not going to that other," she tells me, raising the skin where her eyebrows would have been. "What's your favorite place?" she asks. I smell the ringing edge of the ocean. Hers is a garden. "But there can be a garden near a beach," I say, "full of tropical flowers. We can be neighbors." She might smile under palm fronds there, lit by hibiscus, full-bellied and finally warm. After she died, I've had I had a lot of dreams about her, and they were consoling dreams. They felt like visitations, and I had conversations with her. I'm still having them, actually. This is one from not so long after. This is a poem about one of those dreams from not so long after she died. It's called "The Facilities." In the afterlife, it's hard to find a toilet. We wander through sun-drunk, mazy hedges, happening on family and friends sitting in clusters of generous lawn chairs. But the nearby house, she points out, has too many steps for all these old people. She says she prefers the second of the flower beds where I sprinkled her ashes, around those trillion, aren't they strange, in earshot of children roaring at the zoo. But please stop carrying my cremains in a tin for arthritis cream For heaven's sake. It's funny, she goes on, the pitch of her voice a meandering vine, how your dreams dress me in what I wore to your wedding. I worried too much about those arrangements, always guessing what other people were thinking, as if anything matters except the company of birds and close by a cleanish bathroom. Hold my arm, that's right. When you wear my earrings and they chime, that's me looking for a place to go. The next poem, I grew up in New Jersey. It's called Garden State, so it flashes back to teenage years. A man in a suit approached and touched my arm. Would I pose in front of the merry-go-round? I was 13, free for an hour in the middle of Paramus Park Mall in America. I was America. The man was leading a tour. The tourist spoke no English. My English mother said, your sister is beautiful, but you are reasonably attractive. She chose my clothes. That day, a blouse abuzz with flowers, a pink pleated skirt. Yes, I said, and sat on the bench. Everybody smiled. My hair curled like orchid petals. A carousel horse whispered, why would they point their cameras at you? As if you were pretty. This will be a story, I replied, of cold glass eyes that saw the bloom in me. There are a lot of poems in the book that are either spell or prayer poems in one way or another, or and there's a subset of them that are tarot specific. So one of the things I did during the pandemic is I ordered a tarot deck, the design of which I loved, and started learning the traditional meanings of the cards and dealing myself a spread every day. I think the reason I did this was because I'm a planner, and the pandemic completely short-circuited my ability to plan anything. In fact, I had a poetry book come out, my last one, in March of 2020, and it just swept all my plans right off the table. So, and the tarot cards, it was a way to imagine what might be ahead. Um, this is from one of those readings. It's called Flammable Almanac. I pick up the cards as a kind of game because the pages of my calendar are salt. A char-cloaked man who spilled 3 cups hunkers in me, unable to budge. The air smells like smoke. Put your toes in the water, Temperance says. I know you're discouraged, but the only way you will ever arrive is to get your feet wet. Bury bulbs. One day they will be lilies in your pocket. So I armor up and ride across a desert upside down, wand erect, so inflamed my horse is blushing. There may be nowhere to go, but I move fast and through and past summer, my hands learning the meanings as the meanings learn me. An ashy history flows into an egg yolk tomorrow. Autumn, I become the king of pentacles. Ivy climbs the ground, the chair, and fruits all over my clothes. When the psychic said, good things come to you through fire, I thought he meant my whole world had to burn. Now I know the fire reddens inside me, every paper window incandescent. I thought I should read a spooky poem. This one's got ghosts in it. The This one's called Memorandum of Understanding. I believe in utility poles, transformers, lightning arresters, subtransmission lines, and static lines. The dead southern yellow pine on the corner and its arcane spiral symbols. I've woken to a stranger murmuring my name in a rented house, a ghost girl saying, help me. I wear earring chandeliers of scavenged fox. I've never seen white hands in the dark, except mine. I once caught the signal of a running man, a dimness near the moving boxes in my antebellum office building. There's blood in the walls. I don't know about spirits. I believe in trying to talk, but mostly in listening. Power cables are insulated by the air itself. Overhead it mumbles and sometimes shrieks. I can feel its tendrils reaching for me. And here's one of those spell poems. It's about releasing all the bad stuff that's happened to you. And every time I read it, I think, may it work. The red door. What trouble scratches at the red door? Release it, not knowing. So your people left you alone in the wood? Let it go. Let go of trouble or people? No one knows. Let not knowing go. Unclasp your words and let them float. While exiting your body, they may tear another hole. Don't mourn it. Wounds open, then close at an hour you don't control. As hurt swung wide, let it heal over. Don't adore the scar, rose token of home. Burn the kindling you've been carrying. Molecules of smoke, shiver and let go. So just one more, and it's from my that last book I mentioned. It's called The State She's In. It's another spell poem, but this one has a participatory element. And I keep hoping that it's going to be obsolete, and it keeps not being obsolete. If it gives you a clue, I wrote it around 2016. It's the participatory element is that there are, I don't know if you can see it, probably not, but there are 3 blank spaces in the poem. For the first, I'll say blank. For the first 2, think of someone you'd like to banish from the universe. For the last, think of something wonderful. The title is All-Purpose Spell for Banishment. A pox on blank and the gerrymander he rode in on. Expel, export, exile him while we smudge sage smoke around. At this 0 hour, as our wombs contract under the moon, cast him out, groper, loomer, cheater, rapist, harassing, mogul, bully, frilled Narcissus of a boss. Evict without visa, dissolve his assets and social media accounts. Let there be no comb-over strays stranded on sofa backs, no despotic perfume. Erase his name even from rumor, from amygdala. Remove all dimples left in moss by cloven loafer. There is no blank. There never was. As the last syllable of this incantation sounds, it breaks over us how light we feel, like lemon mousse in a silver dish on an early spring morning before the leaves grow in, each cell of foam trapping nothing but sugar and sunshine. On our tongues, only blank. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm so looking forward to Beth's reading and your questions at the end. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Lesley. If you have questions for Lesley, you can add them to the Q&A. We will address them after Beth's reading. I would love to introduce to you all Beth Armstrong. She began her career in the zoo field as a keeper at the Columbus Zoo, eventually working her way up to the head keeper of gorillas. In 1995, she co-founded the first ZAC Zoos and Aquariums Committing to Conservation Conference. And since then, she has advised and helped organize the last 25 years of the ZAC conferences. In 2016, she founded Finding Your Voice, Inspirational Stories from Women Who Protect Wildlife and Wild Places. It is a 2-day conservation summit bringing together university and high school students, zoo personnel, and reps from NGOs and field sites in order to mentor the next generation of conservationists through stories and life experiences. Beth's first book, Voices from the Ape House, was published by Ohio State University Press Trillium in March of 2020 and is available online. Running through all of Beth's work is the power of stories to affect change, whether they are stories of the individual gorillas she was privileged to work with, or creating platforms for researchers, community organizers, in situ educators to share their stories. She believes firmly that our stories define us, they matter, and they have the ability to change the world. Thank you for being here, Beth. I am so thrilled and excited to hear what you have to read for us.
Thank you very much. And Lesley, we have something in common with having both of our books published in March of 2020. Anyway, let me start with, I'm going to start with the first, a reading from the first chapter in the book, Voices from the Ape House, just to give you an idea of the daily routine of working as a gorilla keeper in a zoo. So chapter 1, Ape House. It is always the smell I remember. Opening the back kitchen door to the ape house lets loose a wave of gorilla, a thick, deep, pungent odor that envelops me as I unlock the door to let myself in. The aroma rolls out, dissipating into the early morning cool. By the end of the day, I will smell like a gorilla, their perfume clinging to my clothes, my hair, my skin. The gorillas hear me. The click of the huge padlock alerts them that I have arrived and another day has begun. I hear their welcoming vocalizations, a deep rumbling, each greeting as distinct as the individual animal that elicits it. Crossing the kitchen to the solid wooden sliding door that opens to the back keeper aisle, I unlock it. And as I slide it to the right, it reveals Kolo, the first gorilla born in captivity, the matriarch of our gorillas, sitting in her usual dignified way at her barred back door. She has half a grapefruit husk perched snug on her head, perfectly balanced on her sagittal crest, a crown, if you will. She looks at me in such a dead-on serious way, I turn away to hide my smile. She looks silly, so sincere and thoroughly imperial. How does she pull it off? Good morning, Kolo, I say as she carefully watches me. I have never been one of her favorites. Our initial meeting on my first day in the ape house didn't go well, and I don't think she has ever forgotten nor forgiven me. She tolerates me, but I don't think she's overly fond of me. Kolo is one of the most beautiful gorillas I will ever meet. The contours of her face are heart-shaped. Her brown eyes are penetrating with an unusual rim of light gray around each iris. Her hands and feet are long and narrow. Her fingers and toes are equally long. In a word, they are elegant. Her coal-black skin is flawlessly uniform. Her thick hair coat healthy and a deep black. She is grayed out as she has gotten older, but she has none of the reddish hair on her head that many of our other females have. She reminds me of a New York City matron from a well-to-do family, always smartly turned out, hair and makeup in place, wearing the perfect Chanel suit. I turn back to the kitchen, start a pot of coffee, soak the 8 food bins filled with veggies and fruit, and then grab the vitamin bottles and begin my walk down the back aisle, distributing vitamins to each of the gorillas. This daily morning walk ensures that the gorillas receive their vitamin C and multivitamin tablets. But more importantly, it allows us to check on them, to give them a quick look-see, to make sure all is okay. Over the years, this walk will reveal much heartache and joy. It will make known that in the depths of the night, their lives went on without us, that babies were born, beloved troop members died, a daily reminder that really we are only periphery to their complicated lives. We may be charged with keeping them, but they never will be ours. We keepers are the fortunate few in this world, to bear witness to their lives, to every once in a while be asked to join in a bout of play or chase, to be accepted as an observer watching the careful tenderness of a silverback touching his newborn son for the first time, or to unexpectedly come upon a boisterous round of tickling between 2 usually reserved adults and backing away quietly so as not to interrupt them. We few hear the sad mourning call after the death of a troop member, the haunting refrain wafting through the ape house, its tender tendrils looking into every corner and cranny, nook and cranny, as if searching for the lost group member. We are, quite simply, privileged. And then I want to read you one about the first mother and father reared infant at the Columbus Zoo. His name was Fossey, named after Diane Fossey. This is chapter 28, Learning to be a Gorilla. Fossey is tottering away from his mom today. He sees his dad in the distance and is inevitably and inextricably drawn to him. Bridget, his mother, eyeballs the situation and then seems to sigh and heaves her substantial bulk up to go gather her infant back into her arms to keep him tethered close. This will eventually change, and Bridge will allow Fossey more frequent time with his father, but not just yet. Months later, the infant phase is over. Fossey's time glued to his mother's chest is officially done, and the toddler phase has begun. She has started shifting him to her back when moving around their daily lives. Back transport can be quite entertaining to watch. In the beginning, infants will lie with their chest flat on their mom's back, a ventral dorsal, infant's chest to mom's back position, holding on for dear life with hands and feet. Once the kid gains more confidence, the infant may sit upright on the mother's back, looking like a jockey atop a horse, rhythmically moving to the mom's gait. And what I can only describe as cloud gazing, an infant might be seen to lie flat on his back, idly lollygagging, gazing up at the sky. When it is time to shift locations, to transfer in or out, youngsters get it in gear and rush over to their mothers to climb on board, anxious not to be left behind. And I want to read you this brief paragraph because it sort of addresses, as you're a keeper and working in a zoo, I think a lot of people wonder how we feel about it, or in my case, how I felt about working in a zoo setting. And you have your moments where you question it. But this sort of, it's the push and pull of it. Do I stay in the zoo world and try and make a difference? And do I really agree with zoos? So it's that back and forth that I kind of wanted the public to know that we do, at least in my, with me, I thought about it a lot and struggled with it. So this is called Humans and Gorillas, chapter 21. It's just a brief paragraph. We humans have a complicated history regarding gorillas, including our fascination with them and our selfish need to want them close. Gorillas mirror us in unaccountable ways. Our interactions with family members, our investment of time in raising children, supplying guidance and comfort as our children grow up and away from us. We mirror one another in our joy and our laughter when playing, in our friendships and in our feuds, and in our need for privacy and dignity. They delight us in their similarities, while at the same time make us somewhat uncomfortable. We see our humanity in them, but when you are in essence the warden, that commonality gives one pause. And then I'm going to read you this last one. Let me make sure we're okay on time. And it's about a little description about juveniles. Juvenile gorillas are very similar to our juveniles. And also this will lead into a trek up to see mountain gorillas in Rwanda. Juvenile males are grubby and slightly disheveled. Everything about them seems a bit too big or ill-fitting. The dirt of everyday life seems to find its way deep down through their hair coat, clinging to their skin so they always look a little gray, like they are in need of a thorough bath or hosing off. They are trouble with a capital T at the age of 5, 6, and 7. Juvenile males seemingly suss out situations, calculate the trouble they can cause, and then have at it. They are masters of ornery, naughty for the sheer delight of it. And once again, because adults are so tolerant, only the most egregious antics will be dealt with. And I wanted to do that a little bit of a backdrop of what juvies are like as I took this trek up to see mountain gorillas in Rwanda. It's not a long trek up to the gorillas. We walk through a small village, then terraced farmlands, and over a simple stone wall, the demarcation between private and public land, and finally cross over into the Parc National des Volcans in northwestern Rwanda, home to mountain gorillas. We continue until we are enveloped by heavier vegetation. The morning air is cold. The undergrowth is thick and so springy underneath that a foot can easily slide down into the packed plants, which can reach all the way to your thighs. Extricating yourself can be tricky. I had been to see mountain gorillas once, 10 years earlier in Uganda. Now on this day in Rwanda, I'm fortunate to once again to see gorillas. We smell, then hear them before actually catching our first glimpse. Their unmistakable pungent odor saturating the air before hearing the slow rumblings of a gorilla troop talking to one another. In a 1989 article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, explorer and conservationist J. Michael Fay described following lowland gorillas in the Congo basins. Quote, "We knew we were close. The smell was so thick you could almost physically touch it. No matter how many times I have been around gorillas, there is always that feeling of delight, coupled with a dose of amazement when in their presence. I look at the other people we were hiking with, all friends and colleagues, and we all share the same loopy smile, a pinch me sort of look on our faces. When we finally see them, the gorillas are relaxed, eating, napping, and playing. The females nurse their babies while the adult male plays Lord of the Manor, quietly watching over all. They are not even remotely curious about us. We keep our required distance due to the risk of spreading any type of infection we may unknowingly carry. Our allotted time is up after an hour, and we move into the bamboo forest. A well-defined path creates a tunnel-like corridor through this towering jungle, the sky overhead completely obliterated. The bamboo is so dense and thickly interwoven along the borders of the trail that there is no plausible exit off the path. I realize this when a juvenile gorilla makes an appearance. He has that cocksure strut, the let's see what I can do to rile things up attitude that all teenagers, humans and gorillas can employ when of a mind. I see what's coming before he even begins. He's got his swagger on, walking stiff-legged, his insolence evident in his body language. I try to back into the tall bamboo quietly, but it is impossible to avoid him. He does a half hitch up and then down with his right leg, gathering forward momentum while beating his chest, pock, 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 before giving me a half-hearted thump on my leg as he runs by. He is displaying, practicing at being a future leader. He's testing us, but with the arrogance of a youngster who's confident in his place in the world. He has the backing of his father, the silverback, and his mother, and other adults within the troop, should we do anything untoward or threatening toward him. He can bring the wrath of the entire troop down on our heads with just one cough grunt from him. He knows it, and I know it. The key to situations like this is to not react, to avert one's eyes, to relax your body and face. Although I have worked with gorillas for years, there is something slightly daunting when faced with a gorilla in the wild. Much to my relief, he carries on down the path, a Johnny attitude about him, just pausing for a moment to give me one last satisfied, slightly condescending look over his shoulder.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Beth.
Oh,
I think we have time for just one or two quick questions. Lesley, if you'd like to rejoin us, if any of you in the audience have any questions that you'd like to ask of either of our writers, now would be a great time to do so. I also have a question for each of you that I would love to hear your responses to. I will start with Lesley. Lesley, those poems were lovely, and the emotion of them was very very powerful. It comes through in a lot of the imagery and a lot of the details that you provide about your mother in particular. And I wondered what it meant to you to be including your mother's voice in those poems, especially after she had passed on.
Yeah, right. The dreamed voice. Um, yeah, I think that dreaming the dreams and writing the poems also made me feel closer to her. But there was a dynamic with this book where, although it was a terrible loss, I was able to, because she always had read my poetry books before, and I knew she couldn't read this one, and there's more truth telling in this book than maybe I was able to do before. That there was a kind of terrible freedom in being able to say some of the negative things about my childhood as well as talk about love and grief, right? And so I think the experience of writing the book that way surprised.
Yeah.
I actually thought about something similar when I was listening to you, Beth. That was a beautiful reading. And I was thinking about representing gorillas and who are not representing themselves in prose and thinking about that insolence, particularly in that last scene. That was really wonderful. And I wonder how you think about that.
Yeah, Beth, that was going to be my question as well.
Oh,
How
I'm
you
sorry,
feel
I
about
skipped
that?
you.
No, absolutely. This is fantastic. This is what this is for. The
Yeah.
conversations are great. Yeah. What does that element of privilege that you feel you have in working
Yeah.
with them, but then also speaking on their behalf in some way?
I feel really strongly that they don't have a voice. So it is a part of our responsibility to tell their stories, to bear witness to their lives. Really my hope with this book was, if there's one person out there that came to know gorillas, and especially Bongo, who was one in particular that I just adored and was sort of my guiding North Star. I wanted people to understand that their lives mattered in and of themselves, not having anything to do with us, nothing to do with us, but they mattered. They were good mothers and fathers and funny and interesting and quirky and individual. And there are so many stories of things where you think, I can't believe I just watched that. I cannot believe that happened. And there's very few people in the world that get that close-up view, either people working in the wild or even gorilla keepers. There aren't that many gorilla keepers around. So I feel very strongly that especially in the area of conservation and dealing with other species, and the most powerful ways to tell conservation stories as well, to me, is through it's always personal. Conservation and doing good work to conserve this world, it's always comes down to the personal relationships. And that's how I feel about the gorillas, that it's a responsibility, and they're owed their own voice, either through me or anybody. Welcome anyone else who wants to tell their stories as well, because their stories need to be told.
That's
And I think
beautiful.
sometimes we need to get out of ourselves. We look through the lens of, oh, well, we're humans and therefore, and it's like, no. They have so much, gorillas in particular for me, have so much to teach us about being gentle parents and being really tolerant and resilient. I mean, in the face of very, very extreme things that they went through when they were youngsters. Many of the gorillas I dealt with were wild caught, which is very traumatic. So,
Yeah.
and they carried that with them. And so we owe them the telling of their stories. That's how I look at it.
That's fantastic. I mean, thank you. That's a wonderful answer and a wonderful reminder. It makes me think about how often we as storytellers, as humans, have used animals as an element of storytelling throughout time. Like we feature them in our stories as examples of what it means to be good humans, because we do see ourselves so reflected in them.
Mhm.
I like that idea of sort of flipping it as a responsibility and making it this
Yeah.
kind of important role that we play in the act of conservation, is telling the stories. That's lovely. Thank you.
Well, and just
Yeah.
one other thing real quick, but and for me, again, going back to one particular silverback, Bongo's life mattered, period, full stop. His life mattered. And so his story needed, this book is dedicated to him. It's dedicated to him, and it's dedicated to my grandmother, who was a storyteller. So if people get that wow, this animal was phenomenal, was just, he was like the wise elder in the village that could kind of do that to you.
Mhm.
So, oh, okay, all right, I'm backing off. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Thank you both. This was so wonderful. It was such a lovely variety of things to listen to this evening. Thank you all in the audience for being here. This is, again, one of my favorite things that I get to do. It's so much fun to host people who write such wonderful things. We have our next reading from the room will be on Tuesday, November 19th, of two more readers for you, Jen Martelli and Megan Miralia. I hope that you all can make it to that one as well. That will be at 7 o'clock. And then please, of course, as well, feel free to join for the Writers' Room After Hours interview, where Marjorie Gans will interview Jennifer Lang on October 29th, Tuesday, October 29th at 7:30. You can find all of our videos and recordings on YouTube at the Writers Room Boston YouTube channel, and other information about events can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on the Writers Room website. Thanks once again, Beth and Lesley, for being here. This was so wonderful.
You.
Thank you. Thank you. This was really fun.
Of course. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.